Hello, and welcome to Unit 11. This is going to be about ecology, and this will talk about the world around us with all the critters, both whether they're autotrophic, whether they're heterotrophic, or whether they're actually fungus or decomposers. And then the abiotic factors, whether it be water, soil, sunlight, temperature, or air, and how they all interact to help each other or to hinder each other. And then how these guys who you see taking over may actually affect all the rest of them. So 11A, levels of ecology. The smallest unit of an ecological environment is the species. In this case, we'll talk about this squirrel, who's a herbivore, eats plant material. I think I've also seen him eat insects, so it's a little omnivoric, but let's call it a herbivore. Species is a group of organisms that can reproduce and make viable offspring. So here's a mom, and looks like it's got a growth on its, oh, I'm sorry, that's a baby. Remember, the job of any species is to perpetuate the species, and to do that you have to have offspring, and they have to be viable. They got to be able to reproduce to get the next generation. So this is a mommy taking a baby from point A to point B, very gingerly. Population is a group of organisms in the same species living in the same area and interbreeding with one another. There are some baby squirrel that will eventually move off to different trees. Hopefully they will not interbreed because they're too close together, but they'll interbreed with other squirrels in the area. And if you've actually got a pretty decent area, you can see 13, 14, 15 squirrels, probably not all from the same parents. Communities are a little bit bigger. Communities are lots of different populations from different species, all living in the same area and all interacting, whether it's predator-prey or whether they're help look out, like you may actually find raccoons helping to look out for squirrels. Looks like a couple of these. That one still has a link in it. Not even a good picture of a squirrel. Could have found a much better picture. But that's a community. It's a group of different populations all interacting, living in the same area. Communities and ecosystems have two different large areas. You have the biotic one, which these are the factors that are living. They're made of chinops, and remember, you mix these chinops to make hydrocarbons, which is an organic molecule. Then you start making carbohydrates and lipids by putting oxygen in there, amino acids and proteins by nitrogen, more amino acids and proteins by putting in sulfur, and then you actually go to phosphorus, and you can start making nucleic acids like RNA and DNA. And this is basically the biotic portion. Then you can, oh, I'm sorry, and then I also just put this one in just a few minutes ago. Remember carbohydrates from Unit 2, I think, carbohydrates, where we start with monosaccharides to make disaccharides to make polysaccharides, or lipids to start with glycol to make fatty acids to make triglycerides. And then proteins, we have amino acids, which is the monomer. These are the monomers to make the polymer polypeptide. And then nucleic acids, we have a nucleotide to actually come up and make RNA and DNA. And remember, that's A, T, C's, and G's, and sometimes U. And then we also have the high energy compounds. We have ATP to actually make nucleotide, monophosphate. This is a triphosphate, and we have also diphosphate, ADP. But these are the high energy molecules or compounds that are going to help actually make all of these things. This is the biotic realm. Then we also have what are called abiotic. Abiotic are the non-living factors. This is like sunlight, which you can, and this actually isn't really sunlight. This is sunlight bouncing off of whether it's moisture, like steam or fog, or it's particulate matter, but it's sunlight bouncing off. Also have water. Then we have temperature, soil, and atmospheric gases, oxygen, nitrogen, water vapor, carbon dioxide, all of which the plants and the animals need. And then the ecosystem. The ecosystems are all the living, the biotic, and all the non-living biotic factors in a particular area. Like for us, the temperate deciduous forest, or it could be the tropical rainforest, which is basically determined by temperature and humidity, which is the precipitation. Biome, one of the largest areas. This is when we start taking ecosystems, so like the deciduous forest, and we start putting them all together from Maine all the way down into Florida. You have some over here on the west coast of the United States, then lots of Europe, and you can start putting these things together, and you can see some down here in the southern hemisphere as well. We have the tundra way up top, taiga, grassland, desert, lots of desert, tropical rainforest, and then temperate deciduous forest. So these are all determined by the plants, animals, and fungus, and the abiotic factors, primarily temperature and precipitation, all making biomes. This is a biome chart, and you can see as moisture goes up, you get more and more precipitation. You change from, in this case, a hot desert where you get very little rain and very high temperature, to a tropical grassland where temperature is still the same, but you get more moisture, and then even more moisture turns it into a tropical deciduous forest, and even more moisture into the tropical rainforest. You can do the same thing for a cold desert, where you put a little moisture in and you get the temperate grassland. You throw a little bit more moisture into it, but it's cold. It's called taiga. Warm it up a little bit, and it's a temperate deciduous forest, and warm it up even more, and you get that tropical deciduous forest, or you can get the temperate rainforest, where it's not quite as hot and not quite as much rain, but it is still a rainforest. Those are the biomes. And then this is actually looking at the soil depth. And if you take a look at the soil depth, you can actually increase the soil, you can decrease the soil going to the parent bedrock. And if you see this, the deepest soil, and this is located really close to the equator, you can look, you can see temperature going up. It doesn't look like that's the effect, because we actually have evaporation and temperature pretty low over here for this soil. Looks like it's actually precipitation. As precipitation grows, you also get deeper soil, because the moisture goes in, starts weathering and eroding the rock, physically and chemically weathering it. And if we get lots of precipitation like you get in the tropics, you get a very thick soil. It does not have to be a very rich soil. It just means that it's soil, it weathers the rock much deeper in depth. And there is that bear telling us to stop for 11A. Work on those homework questions. Make sure you understand what we did, or what I covered in 11A, and what you're supposed to learn. Thank you much for stopping by. Adios.